Hey y'all, this is my capstone instructional unit, and what I'm going to be covering here is the mixing process from start to end. It's going to be a very broad overview, but I am going to try to cover as much as I can. I am very limited on time, so I'm not going to explain what all of what all these different things in the workstation mean and what they are. I'm going to rely on the viewer to kind of intuit what some of this stuff is. So like up here is all my audio, down here is like each of these individual things account for a different channel of audio, and they come together to form the song. So the first thing that I do when I sit down to mix something is I add a channel strip. And this channel strip is very, very important for a couple of reasons. So I'm going to put it on every single source in this session. So it's going to be on the kick drum, it's going to be on my vocals, it's going to be on my guitars, it's on every single thing. And this already does a couple of things to sweeten up the sound. So let me turn all those off, and then we're going to listen. And then we're going to turn them on. So already we can hear it's doing something to the sound. And if you're not listening on headphones or through a decent set of speakers, I highly encourage you to put headphones on. Or if you happen to have a good set of speakers, listen through those. Because if you're not going to be able to tell what I'm doing. So the channel strip is important for a bunch of reasons. I will explain each section of it in series. So we start over here, and it goes from right to left, top to bottom. We start at the preamp section. This is just metering. Preamp section, this allows us to dial in the level of gain or loudness that's coming in to the rest of these things. So this is really important. I hardly ever touch this. The only reason I would touch this is if I want to specifically affect a certain type of change in my signal, and that would be called saturation. So preamp saturation is really big on these old Neve consoles. Oh yeah, I should probably also mention that. So this particular thing, this plugin is an emulation of the now effectively priceless Neve 8028 studio console. These are very, very rare pieces of equipment. They were often custom built. Like there's one at East West Studios in Los Angeles that was custom built for Michael Jackson in the 80s. Dave Grohl personally bought one for his own home studio. Like, they're very rare, they're very hard to get your hands on, and the Neve consoles that you can get your hands on are hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're very expensive pieces of gear. And this piece of software right here basically just lets me make it sound like I'm running all my stuff through one of those. So it's going to affect my signal in the same way, or in a very similar way, that now old technology would affect my sound. So that's the preamp section. Next we hit our filter. This is an EQ or equalizer. Cut. So that covers our preamp section. This next strip here is our EQ or equalizer. And what this does is it lets me single out things within a sound, lets me single out certain frequency spectrums and accentuate or depress them. So if we just solo the guitar here and listen to it, let's say that I want more 10 kilohertz in my sound. I can set this to 10, and then I can raise this, and you hear it getting harsher, right? And then say I might want to, oh, that's too harsh, I want to pull it back. I pull this back, and you hear the sound gets a lot darker. That is EQ explained. in its very basic nutshell. The next section is the compressor. Compressors, it's really hard for me to demonstrate what this does without getting really like heady and wasting time on it. So what the compressor does is it's essentially going to take the loud sounds, make them quieter, the quieter sounds, make them louder. It's going to squish the signal, kind of, and make everything more even across the board. And then our gate section over here in the fourth column, this is going to kind of cut out background noise. So an example of where that would be useful would be like, let me unsolo this, let me solo up the toms. So this being a live drum set, I recorded this in a room, and I recorded everything at the same time. So I had microphones on each drum, and then over the kit to catch the cymbals. So if we listen to the tom mics here, you'll see it's labeled floor tom, and I don't know why that's also labeled floor tom. That should be rack tom. If we listen to these, you can tell that there's like other stuff in there that's not ideal. Like, we don't want that in there, and sometimes that's going to muddy up our sound. So that's where the gate comes in. And this is essentially just going to say, okay, anything that is below this loudness is going to get cut down by, like, however many dB I want it to be. So, like, if I want to cut it by 4, I'd do that. If I want to cut it by 8, I'd put it up there. Sorry, no, if I want to cut it, you know. And you see this moving, that's my gate's threshold. Or range, I guess. Sorry. Cut. So next up is the gate. And this, put very simply, is going to look at my signal and say, all right, anything that is below this level of loudness, and that level is wherever I set it with the range knob here, you see it's right there. Anything that is below this level is going to get cut down by so many decibels. So like 1 click up is 2. The second click up puts me around 4. And so on. And then this last strip here is just a fader that controls my overall output gain. So that's the channel strip explained. I'm going to do a quick time lapse here. And while I'm doing the time lapse, I'm going to explain bus routing and why that's important, just so I don't have to waste time on it, on explaining it as I do it after this time lapse. When I come back, I will have everything EQ'd, and that means that, like, so if I press play, you'll notice I can hardly hear the kick drum. The snare's not as loud as it should be. The cymbals are kind of buried. The voice is way buried. So EQ is going to help me to fix all of that, sort of, and also sweeten these sounds. And of course, I'm not just going to be EQing it. I'm also going to be compressing, gating things that need gated. The bulk of my processing is going to get done just in this plugin. And then everything else I do is going to be like little extra detail-y stuff. So I'm going to start this time lapse. And then when I come back, it's going to already sound a lot different. Here we go. Okay, so I am back and I have finished working with the channel strips. So here, if we take a little listen, you can hear all the stuff that got changed just by that. If you want to go back and listen to the clips that I played before, and then come back here and listen to it again, this is the difference we're going to see. Sounds a lot different. So, next up is bus processing. And the reason that this is important is because I want to be able to control volumes of a bunch of channels with one fader. So we're going to select all of the instrument tracks, and I'm going to add a bus for selected tracks. I'm going to name it instrument. And then I'm going to make it a fun little color, maybe like red. And then I'm going to make another bus, and I'm going to call it vocal. And I'm going to route the vocal to the vocal bus. And we'll make this one blue. So these two buses allow me to independently control the volumes of the instrumental and the vocal with one knob each. Even though the vocal is one knob, I could already do that. But for my workflow's sake, I like to do this. So now if I hit play, we'll see that what I can do is I can mess with this, and I can cut the instrumental down, and the vocal's more present. Or I can make the vocal basically non-existent. Now you'll see I did a little bit of not really processing anything on the vocal. Everything in this strip is still set to the default settings, and that's because I do a little bit of extra stuff to my vocal to get it to sit a little bit more comfortably in the mix and get the volume that I want out of it. And I put all of these effects in here before the channel strip because in a studio workflow, that's what you would also do. So the first thing that I do is I put on some kind of de-esser plugin. Usually Sibilance Live, because it's just what I have. And I'll move it up so that it's hitting before. And what this is before the channel strip. And what this is going to do is, so my S's have a lot of very harsh upper frequencies that are very nasty when they come through, like a car stereo, for instance. If you've ever listened to a song really loud through your car speakers and the singer hits one of those like hissy S's and it like kind of grates your eardrums, it's because it wasn't de-essed enough, or maybe it couldn't have been. You never know. But I'm going to do some basic de-essing. I throw that on there. And then the next thing I do is I'll do a little bit of equalization before I hit the preamp to kind of sweeten it up. And what I like to use for that is this TubeTech PE1C plugin. Really, really like these. These are another piece of hyper expensive gear that I don't have the money around to buy one, but thankfully they make this handy little plugin version. And I'll put that above the channel strip as well. And then out of the equalizer, I go into compression, which I already explained what compression does. And my personal preference for compressors on vocals is going to be either the TubeTech CL1B or the Arouser. The Arouser does some nasty things to my CPU usage, so we're going to opt for the CL1B. Also a TubeTech piece. Wonderful. Also very expensive. Also can't afford it. And then after I've done that, I finally go into the channel strip. So I'm going to get those settings in a quick little time lapse, and I'll come back.
Beneath these showroom lights, it's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. There's something I wanted to give to you, something simple, something new. But how am I to show you if you're not here? On and on it goes, I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. There's something I wanted to give to you, something simple, something new. But how am I to show you if you're not here? On and on it goes, I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. There's something I wanted to give to you, something simple, something new. But how am I to show you if you're not here? On and on it goes, I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. There's something I wanted to give to you, something simple, something new. But how am I to show you?
Okay, so now the vocal is mixed. I have it sounding the way I want it to sound. Now we're going to get to buses, specifically effects buses. So I could add effects channels. I don't personally like that very much because you can't send effects channels anywhere. They just default back to the main fader, and that's not very flexible. I was messing with this last night, and it wasn't getting me where I wanted to go. So I'm going to have all of my effects on bus channels rather than effects channels or aux sends or anything like that. I'm not a fan of that. So this bus, I'm going to have a reverb. And then this bus, I'm going to have a slapback delay, which is essentially just a really fast delay. And we can't forget, this isn't for an effect. This is part of the workflow. We need a drum bus. The drum bus is very important, especially for projects like this. So instead of sending the drums to the instrument bus, I'm going to send them to the drum bus. And then the drum bus will go to the instrument bus. What this is going to let me do is it's going to let me hijack this drum signal, just the drums, and send it somewhere else. Now, usually when you record drums in a professional studio, they have microphones that they'll put far off the kit in the room to catch the sound of the room. I don't have enough microphones for that. and I also don't have the right kind of microphones, and I also don't have a room really that's big enough to have any kind of character. So I'm going to make my own drum room. So I'm going to make a new bus. We're going to call this drum room. I'm going to stick it over here, right next to the drum bus. And I'm going to put a little reverb on here. We're going to go with Valhalla Vintage Verb. This is like an industry standard vocal plugin. If you've listened to any record that came out past like probably 2010 or so, this thing was used somewhere on that record. It's one of the most popular ones in the industry, and it's super cheap. It's a great piece of gear. So I'm going to send my drums with the sends here to the drum room and send it at Unity pre-fader. And now we're going to hear, if I solo this up, we're going to be able to hear that those drums come through with a big reverb on them. Now that's a little bit more reverb than I really want on them. So what I can do is I can go to the presets here. I can go to rooms, and I'll pick like large wood room. And now that sounds like it was recorded off the kit in a room with some nice character to it. So now what I can do is I can solo up the drum bus. No room. Room. And it sounds like it's part of something now. And hell, if I want to make it sound like I have a whole band in that room, then I can route the instrument bus and the vocal bus also to the drum room. And then we have... Let's take the solo off of those. Now we have nothing. Why do we have nothing? There we go. Now we have a band in a room playing. I personally really like that sound. Then we have the slapback delay, and the delay that I'm going to use is going to be Timeless 3 from FabFilter. I love this thing. And we're going to go to the slapback preset, and I prefer the 200 millisecond magic, and I don't like that thing right there. So we're going to take that out, and then here's what that is going to sound like. So we're going to send the vocal to the slapback at Unity pre-fader, and then here's what this delay is doing.
And on it goes. I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay.
And I'm going to introduce a little bit of drive to that signal, actually, make it sound a little bit more gritty.
There's something I wanted to give to you. Something simple, something new.
I like the sound of that. Now that's going to be a very subtle detail in the mix, and I bet even if I were to play this back right now, you wouldn't even be able to hear it. Yeah, you can hardly even tell it's there, but I really like the little bit of flavor that it gives. It's all in the little details that you can hardly even tell. And then, of course, I'm going to send... Yeah, that's fine to go to the main. So that's our slapback. And then the reverb. Now, see, I made this bus with the intention of sending everything to it so that it would sound like everything was in one space. But with the drum room, I really don't even need this, so I can just remove that. Now, what else do I need? Well, I think some little bit of balancing is in order here. Usually, tracks get mixed to -6 dB at their peak. And you can see that readout right here with these little tiny blue negative infinities. So if I press play, you can see that I am well above my threshold of -6. But luckily, what I can do is I can highlight all these and pull them down slowly until I've got this below -6.
On it goes. I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. There's something I wanted to give to you. Something simple, something new, but how it on it goes. I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. On it goes. I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, there's something I wanted to give to you. Something simple, something.
Now, something that's really useful to do is EQing on a reverb. So if I play this back here, you can tell there's a lot of frequencies in this reverb in the drum room that I'm not a huge fan of. It's very boomy. There's a little bit more low end in there than I really want. So what I can do is I can take an EQ. I'm going to use the FabFilter Pro Q3, and I can go in here and just cut out everything under like 100. And then what that's going to do is if I solo this up, maybe 100 was a little overkill. There we go. But now see, if I turn this off, we've got a little bit more boom in there. I'm not a fan. So I turn that EQ on, got a high pass on it, and no more boomy high end, no more boomy low end. So now let me unsolo that. Now I'm going to cover a really important process that's good for a lot of flavor. I'm going to do parallel processing on the drums. So I'm going to throw another bus on here. We're going to put it next to the drum room. And I'm going to send the drum room also to this. We're going to call this parallel drums. And again, we're going to send Unity pre-fader. And this track is we're actually going to send both of these to parallel drums. And what this is going to do is this track is going to have a really aggressive compressor on it. So this is where I would use like a really flavorful, colorful compressor. And in this situation, I'm going to use Vlad G Sounds Molok compressor. So this is an emulation of the Fairchild 670, which is a super duper sought after compressor. I mean, you can't get one of those things for, I mean, God, they're like $400,000, 40,000, but still equally unattainable. So this compressor is super duper colorful, super aggressive. So I'm going to dial this guy in. And then what I can do is I can blend this with my dry signal. So if I press play here and that's why I have a reverb bus outside of the drum reverb, because I don't want to process everything through that. Okay. So let me do that real quick. We're going to call this main reverb. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy my vintage verb settings over for my drum room because I want to use the same kind of reverb. But instead of sending vocals to that, I'm just going to send it to the main reverb. Instead of sending the instrumental to that, I'm just going to send it to the main reverb. And then let's see how that sounds. There we go. I like that. Okay, now the parallel drums. Let's open that up. And we're just going to crush the hell out of this. So our attack is going to be about 30 milliseconds so that we still get the attack coming through. Release is going to be super fast. Ratio is going to be like 7-to-1. All right, let's start dialing this in. Yeah, that's really gritty. Love that. Oh. Yeah, that's the way. So now I can blend this in with my dry drum sound in my drum room, and here's what that's going to sound like. So there's the dries with the room. We're blending this in. Let me give you a little bit more volume here. So what that's doing, it's giving me a little bit more sustain on my cymbals and my snare drum. It's a really, really musical kind of compressor. I love that thing. Okay, so we've got pretty much all of this solidified. The only thing that is left for me to do is add kind of glue some of this stuff together. And the way that I'm going to do that is with bus compression. So I'm going to open up my compressors and limiters. Actually, it's in my mastering compressors. And we're going to use an SSL native bus compressor 2. This is, again, a tool that they're not that expensive as far as compressors go, like the actual hardware unit, but they are very popular. So, like, again, pretty much any rock or pop record that you've listened to probably has about a 75% chance of having touched one of these at some point while it was being made. So I put that on my drum bus, and this is a very, very subtle effect. My attack's going to go to 30. My ratio is going to go at 2. Actually, no, I think it goes to, I'm going to put it at 4. 100% wet. And we are going to start dialing this in. Super fast release. And listen very carefully for what this is going to do as I dial it in. Maybe wise to solo the drums. So that really just kind of solidifies my drum sound. And then the very last thing that I do as I'm mixing is I feel like the vocal here.
Simple, something new, but how am I to show you if you're not here? On it goes. I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. There's something I wanted to give to you. Something simple, something new. But how am I to show you if you're not here?
Alright, so the mix is pretty much finalized. The last thing I like to do as I'm getting ready to start mix bus processing is I like to slap an EQ on my instrumental so that it affects every single instrument track. And I'm going to take about, if we look down at the bottom, we can see that number there. I'm going to take about 1.5 hertz, 1.5 kilohertz, and I'm going to dip down about 1 decibel. And what that's going to do is it's going to cut that range just a little bit from my entire instrumental. And that range also happens to be roughly where my vocal sits. So that's going to make a little bit more room for my vocal and just make it sound a little bit more professional. So let's hear what that sounds like, with and without.
Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. There's something I wanted to give to you.
It's a really, really subtle difference, but it makes it makes a difference. It does. Okay. Now, we are all right. We have reached the home stretch here. The last thing that I have to talk about is mix bus processing. This is what's going to bring my song up to the loudness I need. This is what's going to bring it into a place where I would feel comfortable uploading this to a streaming service. So the first thing that I'm going to slap on it for this is, and I'm going to use the mastering for this. Actually, for the, yeah, for the first thing. God damn it. Okay, the last thing that's left to do is get this mix finalized and ready for streaming services. So if I were to upload this right now, it would be way too quiet. And the way that we can fix that is with mix bus processing. This is going to apply changes and effects to everything in this song. So it's like taking a raw audio file of the song and affecting it on its own. So the first thing that I do is I take some very like customizable EQ, and I will do a little bit of subtractive equalization if I need to. Subtractive EQ is just going to cut out any broad ranges that maybe are a little bit too much and boost any broad ranges that aren't popping enough. So the subtractive EQ is going to be responsible for taking any frequencies that I think are a little too up in the mix, a little too harsh, a little too loud. I'm going to take those and cut them down very slightly. Since this is affecting all of my tracks, if I make a big cut here, it's going to make a massive difference. I don't want massive differences. This is all about subtlety. So just listening to it, I'm going to check if there's anything in here that I feel like I need to take out.
I fall apart beneath these
Okay, well, the thing that I think of off the bat is anything below about 45, about 40 hertz, I'm going to just cut out altogether. I'm going to do a high pass there with a 12 dB slope. That's rumble, and we can't even hear that anyway. Like, we literally, our ears cannot hear that. So it doesn't need to be there. It's taking up sonic space that it doesn't need to. The other thing that I hear immediately is that my highs are a little bit harsh. So I'm going to pull that. No, I don't need a shelf there. So I'm going to pull my highs like around 10K. I'm going to pull that down just a little bit. Like maybe 1 dB. Maybe. And the reason it's so high is because this Lindell strip has a feature at 10K. Like it's got the ability to boost there, and I do that a lot when I want a lot of presence out of something. So we'll cut 10K just a little bit rather than going back and changing it in all the plugins. I really like that. Now, the next thing I'll do is de-essing and high-end compression. That's going to be in my mastering section under compression and limiting. And I'm going to use Soothe 2 by Oak Sound. Now, this plugin is extremely complex. I still haven't figured out how to work it so well. So I'm just going to do the de-essing the master preset. And that's going to pretty much do everything that I need it to. This is a barely audible difference. This is just me being picky. And even that's a little too harsh. Okay. Next thing I've got is saturation. This is where our loudness is going to start to come in. And for saturation on this particular song, I'm thinking the J37 stereo is going to be what I want. So usually songs will be processed through tape machines to give them... it's hard to describe. I can't tell you exactly what it is about this that makes it so nice, but there's something about this. It just makes it sound so much better. First thing I'm gonna want to do is cut that noise level down because that's annoying, and then we're gonna listen. On and on it goes. I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. There's something I wanted to give. So you can really hear the saturation there when I dial it up like that. All right, I like that. I like that. That's a good amount of saturation. And I think tape saturation on that's really the right way to go. Now for where the real loudness comes in. This is K-Clip. This is a plugin that essentially clips off, if I understand it correctly, it clips off the absolute highest frequencies, the inaudible stuff that we don't hear anyway, except at the high end, while preserving loudness. I don't know how this works, if I'm being 100% honest. It might as well be magic. But it lets me get to the loudness I need without running any risk of clipping, which is insane to me. So I'm going to use the light clipping preset, and we're going to watch what this does. So watch this display here, and then watch these over here. So we're sitting around -11 right now. If we turn our in up, All right, so there's the clipping pretty much done. Now I'm going to do additive EQ. Now this is going to take things that I want to accentuate and help me bring them out. And I'm going to do that with this Amic EQ 200 here. I, again, absolutely love this plugin. This is going to be a lot of tinkering, so I'm going to time lapse this one. All right, that is done. So we've got our additive EQ in there. Now I'm going to send this through a mastering compressor. This is an emulation of the Shadow Hills Industries mastering compressor. This is, in my opinion, one of the coolest looking pieces of hardware ever made. I absolutely love the look of this thing, and the sound is even better. So again, this is going to be a super duper subtle change, and it's going to be a lot of me tinkering with things. But the end goal here is going to be just getting these needles to barely compress anything while adding a little bit of level to my signal. So I'm going to, again, do all this in a time lapse. All right, that's figured out. And then the very last thing that I do is brick wall limiting. For this, I'm going to be using the FabFilter Pro L2, and limiting essentially just says, all right, here's the wall. Your signal will not be allowed to get louder than this wall. So again, we're just going to use a preset. I'm going to use the loud preset because this is already kind of a quiet track, honestly. So we're going to do potentially super loud because that looks kind of fun. And now we're going to dial in our final loudness.
Now you might show you if you're not here. On it goes. I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. There's something I wanted to give to you. Something simple, something new. But now you might show you if you're not here.
Now, this is all well and good. It's definitely loud. But in order to tell just how loud it is, I'm going to need the... Come on, where is it? I'm going to need the Yulin loudness meter. This is going to let me see just how loud my thing is. So we're going to pin this, open up the Pro L2, and then be able to see them both in the same window. So now is the moment of truth. This, my goal, the integrated LUFS, is going to be below negative 14 dB.
On it goes.
And we're already way over it. So I'm going to pull this back.
I fall apart beneath these showroom lights. It's just a normal Friday night for you. And if you love me, you would stay. There's something I wanted to give to you. Something simple, something new. But now you might show you if you're not here.
All right, so this segment's gonna be in here just a little bit out of order. Um, I finished the entire song and then realized that I literally forgot to process the bass. So, um, the bass is a DI signal, and what that means is if we listen to it, it's just the signal of the bass. There's nothing like on it. So I'm gonna open up my mixing tab, amp simulators, and then immediately proceed to open the wrong plugin. That sounds like ass. Um, I'm gonna open up this Dark Glass Ultra plugin, and what this is gonna do is it's gonna give me a little bit of flavor in my bass tone. So if we come back here, and then let's process a little bit. So like without the dark glass thing, it just sounds like this. And then with it, it actually like, you know, it sounds like something, which I think is pretty good. And maybe my overheads are a little harsh. Maybe I can tame those. So yeah, that is mixing a song from top to bottom, start to finish. That is my workflow. It's not the workflow. There is no such thing. Everyone's going to do it differently. Everyone's going to talk about doing it differently. But ultimately, these are the processes and the tools that I tend to favor. And that's how you use them. I really would like to have gone more in depth about a lot of this stuff, but if if I had actually had the time to do that, if I just had unlimited time, this would turn into a whole series. So yeah, if I had been assigned the time to actually allow me to go in depth on everything here and make like a full series on it, I would have loved to. Unfortunately, that's just not the situation. I didn't have the time. You know, there's a 10-minute limit on this thing, and editing this is going to take hours because I'm looking down at my recording, and I've been doing this for an hour and a half almost, and I have to cut all this down to 10 minutes and make it somehow still make sense. So, um, yeah, if you're interested in this at all and want to talk about it, shoot me a message. I'm probably going to be uploading this um, in addition to the requirements for school. I'm also going to upload this probably to YouTube. So if and this is to anybody who finds it there, might find it on YouTube. If you want more of these, comment and let me know. Maybe drop a like. It's been a while since I've posted anything. I tend to post like once every few months. Um, but yeah, I really, really enjoyed making this, and I'm looking forward to hopefully doing a bit more of this moving forward. Thank you for watching.